Hey, so tonight we're going to talk about a place many of you might imagine as a land of glittering gold and grand ziggurats, a cradle of civilization. But tonight we're going to peel back the layers of romanticized myth and dive headfirst into the brutal, often terrifying reality of ancient Babylon. Forget what you think you know about majestic kings and hanging gardens. We're going to discover why, if you were plucked from your cozy bed right now and dropped into its sweltering streets, you probably wouldn't last a single day. Before we begin this journey, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below with your city and time. Alright, find that cozy spot, pull the blankets tight around you, and prepare to step through the sands of time. Imagine, if you will, the gentle hum of your modern alarm clock being replaced by the braying of a donkey outside a mud brick wall, a sound that rips through the pre-dawn stillness, not with an invitation to wake, but with a harsh, unyielding demand. You stir, not on a plush mattress, but on a woven reed mat laid directly onto a packed earth floor, its rough texture already chafing against your skin. The air, thick and heavy, assaults your nostrils with a cocktail of smells utterly alien to your sanitized world. This isn't the fresh scent of morning dew or brewing coffee. It's the pervasive, acrid tang of wood smoke from a hearth fire, mingling indistinguishably with the raw, metallic scent of unwashed bodies, the damp, earthy aroma of drying mud bricks, and an undeniable, stomach-churning undercurrent of sewage. It's a smell that clings, that permeates everything, seeping into the very fabric of the mud walls and the rough spun tunics you'd be forced to wear. As your eyes flutter open, the dim light filtering through a high, narrow slit in the wall, a window, but more a ventilation shaft, reveals not smooth painted plaster, but uneven, sun-baked mud bricks, perhaps flecked with straw. You try to push yourself up, your muscles protesting, not from a night of comfortable sleep, but from the cumulative ache of manual labor, or perhaps just the discomfort of the floor. There's no soft pillow, no warm duvet. Your only comfort is the meager covering of a woolen blanket, probably itchy and certainly never truly clean. You're acutely aware of every single dust mote dancing in the weak light, a fine, gritty film that seems to coat every surface, including your tongue. You try to swallow and it feels like sandpaper. The simple act of breathing in this ancient air is a challenge. It's dry, it's hot, and it's loaded with fine particles from cooking fires, from the ceaseless construction, from the very desert wind that whips through the city's open spaces. Your modern routine of a refreshing shower, a clean toilet, and a meticulous brushing of teeth? Forget it. You'd rise with the first glimmers of dawn, not out of choice, but out of necessity. The first order of business would involve a trip to a communal latrine, a reeking pit shared by dozens, if not hundreds, of your neighbors. The sheer lack of privacy, the stench, the flies buzzing in a thick black cloud, it would turn your stomach inside out. Wiping yourself would involve rough pieces of clay or stone, or perhaps nothing at all. The very thought of it would be an assault on your modern sensibilities, a brutal awakening to the utter lack of basic sanitation you take for granted. Then comes the washing. There's no running water, no soap, no clean towel. You might splash a handful of lukewarm water from a clay pot onto your face, water that's been sitting all night, perhaps collected from a distant well yesterday, cloudy with sediment. You feel the grime on your skin, a sticky film of sweat, dust, and the residue of the day before. Your hair would be matted, tangled, probably crawling with lice or fleas, a common companion in ancient times. There's no shampoo, no conditioner, no comb that would truly untangle the knots. You would simply have to make do, perhaps raking your fingers through it, feeling the grit beneath your nails. The clothes you'd wear would be a simple tunic of rough linen or wool, unadorned, coarse against your skin. They would be stained, sweat-soaked, and probably host to their own miniature ecosystem of insects. They would never feel truly clean, always carrying the ghost of their last wear, the lingering smell of your own body, and the pervasive odor of Babylon itself. This isn't a fashion choice. It's functional, practical, and utterly uncomfortable. You'd pull it on feeling the scratch of the fabric, the weight of the dirt, and the immediate sense of resignation, and your teeth.
Oh, your teeth.
Imagine the feeling of a film coating them, the lingering taste of last night's crude meal. There's no toothbrush, no toothpaste, no mouthwash. You might chew on a twig, frayed at the end, or rub a bit of rough cloth across your gums, but the sensation of truly clean teeth would be a distant, impossible dream. Your breath would mingle with the general miasma of the household, a contribution to the symphony of smells. Cavities, toothaches, gum disease. These weren't nuisances to be fixed by a dentist. They were chronic, debilitating realities, often leading to agonizing pain and early death. The physical discomfort alone would be overwhelming. The constant heat, oppressive and relentless, would press down on you from the moment you woke. There's no air conditioning, no electric fan, just the slow, heavy movement of air through narrow openings. You would sweat constantly, your body trying desperately to cool itself, and that sweat would mix with the dust to form a gritty paste on your skin. Your modern body, accustomed to climate control and easy hygiene, would revolt. Your skin would break out, your hair would feel perpetually greasy, and you would be in a constant state of feeling unclean, overwhelmed, and utterly out of place. This isn't just about missing your creature comforts. It's about a fundamental assault on your senses, a stripping away of everything you associate with basic human dignity and personal care. You would be confronted, before the sun had even fully risen, with a primal, visceral reality that screams, "You are not from here, and you are not ready for this." Now, with the lingering stench of the communal latrine still clinging to you and the grit still coating your tongue, your attention turns to the first meal of the day. You're hungry, a deep, gnawing hunger you rarely experience in your world of instant gratification and abundant food. Your stomach rumbles, not for a perfectly toasted bagel or a bowl of organic granola, but for something, anything to quell the ache. What awaits you is likely not a feast, not even a modest breakfast by your standards. It's probably a thick, unappetizing gruel made from barley or millet boiled with water and maybe a pinch of salt. Picture it. A lumpy, bland concoction served in a rough clay bowl, still warm from the hearth fire. The color is dull, a muted beige or grey-brown, reflecting its simple ingredients. There are no vibrant fruits, no fluffy eggs, no rich coffee. This is survival food, designed to provide sustenance, not pleasure. The texture is coarse, the taste flat, and you find yourself chewing rather than savoring each mouthful. Your palate, accustomed to an explosion of flavors, sweet, salty, spicy, umami, would find this meal utterly disappointing, a stark reminder of the culinary chasm between your world and this one. But the taste is only one part of the challenge. Consider the preparation. Your food has not come from a sterile supermarket handled by machines, packaged safely. It has been grown in fields where human and animal waste were used as fertilizer, harvested by hand and processed in rudimentary ways. The water used to boil your gruel? It was drawn from the Euphrates River or a local canal or a well. Think about that for a moment. This isn't filtered, chlorinated, tap-safe water. This is water that has flowed through fields, carried the runoff of the city, been used for washing, and served as the drinking source for countless animals. It's teeming with microorganisms, bacteria, parasites. You can't see them, but your modern immune system, accustomed to a relatively sterile environment, would be utterly unprepared for the microbial onslaught. Each mouthful of that gruel, each sip of water, is a gamble. There's no refrigeration here, no way to keep food fresh for long. What hasn't been consumed immediately is often left out. exposed to flies, dust, and rodents. Your modern food safety standards are a concept utterly foreign here. Meat, if you're lucky enough to get it, would be salted or dried, but still prone to spoilage. Vegetables and fruits, when available, would be washed in that same river water, carrying the same risks. You'd have to eat quickly before insects discovered your meal, before the sun began to warm it to a dangerous temperature. And the flies. Oh, the flies. They are an omnipresent buzzing plague. They land on your food, on your face, on your hands. They carry filth from the latrines, from decaying matter, from sick bodies, and they deposit it with every landing. You try to shoo them away, but it's a futile battle. You're forced to accept their presence, knowing that with every bite, you're ingesting a microscopic world of potential pathogens. Your modern gut, sensitive and unaccustomed to such exposure, would immediately protest. Stomach cramps, diarrhea, vomiting. These wouldn't be occasional inconveniences, but regular occurrences, a debilitating part of daily life. Dehydration would quickly follow, a deadly threat in the relentless heat. Food scarcity is another brutal reality. While Babylon was a fertile land, harvests could fail. War could disrupt supply lines. A single bad season could mean widespread famine. You wouldn't just eat to satisfy your hunger. You would eat to survive. Every morsel would be precious. There's no casual snacking, no abundance of choices. You eat what you are given, when you are given it, and you are grateful for it, no matter how bland or suspicious it might seem. The concept of food waste would be unimaginable. Every scrap would be saved, perhaps fed to animals, or incorporated into a future meal. Your modern privilege of throwing away food because it's not quite right or you don't feel like it would be a shocking display of decadence. Your diet would be monotonous and lacking in many nutrients you consider essential. Grains, pulses, perhaps some fish from the river, and if you're very fortunate, a small amount of goat or mutton. Fresh fruit and vegetables would be seasonal and limited. The varied vitamins and minerals you absorb from a diverse modern diet would be largely absent, leading to deficiencies, weakness, and a compromised immune system. You'd feel perpetually tired, your body struggling to function optimally on such a basic, often contaminated fuel source. Imagine the psychological impact of this constant culinary struggle. The gnawing hunger, the fear of contamination, the limited options, the endless monotony. Food is not just sustenance. It's comfort, it's pleasure, it's a social ritual. Here it's a daily battle for survival, a grim necessity. Your morning gruel would serve as a brutal reminder that in Babylon, every meal is a calculated risk, every bite a potential gateway to illness, and every day a testament to the sheer fortitude required to simply put food in your mouth and live to see another sunrise. Your body, pampered by modern conveniences, would likely rebel before you could even finish your first dubious meal, with the meager breakfast settling like a lump in your stomach. The true grind of the Babylonian day begins. You're not heading to an air-conditioned office, a classroom, or even a retail store with regulated breaks. You're stepping out into the relentless glare of the Mesopotamian sun, where the concept of labor laws or workers' rights simply doesn't exist. Your purpose, your entire day's existence, is dictated by the needs of the city, the demands of the state, or the will of your owner if you are enslaved. If you are a commoner, a free citizen but of low status, you might be assigned to a construction crew. Imagine the towering ziggurats, the massive city walls, the intricate canal systems that made Babylon thrive. These weren't built with heavy machinery. They were built by countless human hands. You would find yourself in a vast, dusty work site, the air thick with the grit of pulverized earth and the sweat of hundreds of bodies. Your task might be hauling mud bricks, freshly molded and still damp, from the brickyards to the construction site. Each brick is heavy, rough, and awkward to carry. You'd load them onto a rough wooden cart, or perhaps onto your own back, feeling the sharp edges dig into your skin through your thin tunic. The sun beats down relentlessly, quickly escalating from a gentle warmth to a blistering inferno. There's no shade, no respite, only the open sky. Your muscles, accustomed to sporadic exercise and comfortable rest, would scream in protest within the first hour. Your back would ache, your shoulders would burn, and your hands, soft from a lifetime of keyboards and touchscreens, would quickly blister and crack. You'd feel the raw pain of exertion, the trembling in your limbs, and the desperate thirst building in your throat. Overseers, armed with long staffs, patrol the work site. They are not there to motivate with kind words or offer encouragement. Their job is to ensure maximum output. A moment's rest, a slowing pace, a perceived weakness, and the staff would come down on your back or shoulders with a sharp, stinging crack. There's no union, no HR department, no one to complain to. Your physical suffering is simply part of the job, an expected cost of building an empire. The fear of the whip, of public humiliation, of reduced rations would be a constant, sharp spur. Water is precious. You'd be allowed infrequent sips from a communal skin or clay jar, the water likely warm, murky, and again full of unseen dangers. Your body would cry out for more, but there wouldn't be any. Dehydration would be a constant companion, dulling your mind, sapping your strength, and leaving you dizzy and prone to mistakes. Sunstroke is a very real, very common threat. A collapse in the heat could mean an indifferent glance from an overseer, perhaps a splash of water, or perhaps just being left where you fell. A new obstacle to be stepped over. If not construction, perhaps you're assigned to the fields. Hours spent bending over under the same brutal sun, harvesting barley with a hand sickle, your fingers quickly growing numb and raw. Or perhaps digging and maintaining irrigation canals, shoveling heavy, wet earth, battling with mud and biting insects. The smell of the earth, the feeling of sticky mud between your toes, the drone of insects, and the relentless, back-breaking repetition would define your day. This isn't idyllic farm work. It's agricultural slavery in all but name, even for the free. Consider the sheer duration of the workday. There are no 8-hour shifts. You would work from sunup to sundown, pausing only for a brief, meager midday meal, perhaps another portion of that bland gruel. That's 12, 14, even 16 hours of continuous physically demanding labor, depending on the season and the demands of the project. There's no concept of weekends, no holidays, no sick days. If you're too ill to work, you don't eat, and you risk incurring the wrath of your superiors. The toll on your modern body would be immense. Your muscles would strain and tear. Your joints, unaccustomed to such repetitive stress, would ache perpetually. Your skin, used to being covered and protected, would be burned by the sun, cracked by the wind, and chafed by rough clothing. You'd develop calluses, sores, and open wounds that, without proper cleaning or medical attention, would quickly become infected. A simple cut could turn into a life-threatening septic infection. Beyond the physical, there's the mental exhaustion. The monotonous rhythm of labor, the constant pain, the omnipresent threat of punishment, the utter lack of agency or control over your own day. Your mind, accustomed to stimulation, to choices, to leisure, would find itself trapped in a relentless loop of primal exertion. There's no intellectual challenge, no creative outlet, no escape. You are a cog in a vast, ancient machine, and your individual suffering is irrelevant. By the time the sun finally dips below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, you would be utterly spent. Your body would be screaming for rest, your mind dulled by exhaustion. The walk back to your mud brick dwelling would feel like an epic journey. You wouldn't have the energy for anything but collapsing onto your reed mat, barely even able to register the pangs of hunger or the persistent itch of unseen parasites. Your modern sense of identity, of self-worth, tied to intellectual work or personal achievements, would be utterly shattered by the sheer, brutal physical demands of Babylonian labor. You would quickly understand that in this world, your body is merely a tool, and its exhaustion is simply the expected outcome of a day spent in service to the empire. Now, let's turn our attention to the bedrock of Babylonian society, the law. You've probably heard of Hammurabi's Code, Hailed as one of the earliest and most comprehensive legal systems, perhaps you think of it as a noble step towards justice. But for you, a modern individual, Hammurabi's Code isn't about lofty ideals. It's a terrifying, unforgiving gauntlet of rules that would leave you utterly vulnerable and probably dead. Imagine a world where your understanding of innocent until proven guilty is a foreign concept. Here, the burden of proof often falls on the accused, and the consequences of even a minor transgression are disproportionately severe. The principle of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, lex talionis, sounds poetic in a textbook, but it's brutally literal in practice. If you, a commoner, were to accidentally blind a fellow commoner during a drunken brawl, your punishment would be the gouging out of your own eye. There's no plea bargain, no compassionate judge, no community service. The scales of justice are balanced with blood. Consider a simple dispute. Perhaps you accidentally damaged someone's property, a neighbor's fence, a shared irrigation ditch. In your modern world, it might be a small claims court, an insurance claim, or an apology and a handshake. In Babylon, if your actions, however unintentional, caused significant damage, you could be liable for its full replacement, or worse, corporal punishment. If you were a builder, for instance, and your shoddy workmanship caused a house to collapse, killing the owner, guess what? You, the builder, would be put to death. If it killed the owner's son, then your son would be killed. The concept of culpability extending to one's family, or the harshness of the penalty, would be utterly shocking. And the social hierarchy is not just about wealth. It's about worth in the eyes of the law. Your modern idealism of equality before the law would shatter immediately. Hammurabi's Code is explicitly stratified. If a man of higher status, say a wealthy merchant or an official, struck you, a commoner, the fine might be a small sum of silver. But if you, a commoner, dared to strike that same high-status man, the punishment could be a public flogging, mutilation, or even death. Your life, your limbs, your very being, or valued differently based on your social standing. As a newcomer, you'd likely be considered a non-entity with little to no legal protection. What if you were accused of a crime you didn't commit? Let's say someone accuses you of theft. In your world, you have lawyers, evidence, alibis, appeals. In Babylon, if the accuser couldn't prove their case, they might be put to death. But if they could, and you were found guilty, the consequences are swift and horrific. For theft, you might have your hands cut off, or be thrown into the river, or even executed. The judicial process itself would be a terrifying ordeal, often involving public shaming, physical ordeal, like throwing you into the river to see if the gods save you. And if you drown, you were guilty, and quick judgments. There's no lengthy trial, no appeals court. The judgment is made and the sentence carried out, often on the spot or within hours. Think about the psychological impact of living under such a system. Every action, every word, every interaction carries a profound weight of potential consequence. You couldn't afford to be careless, to make a mistake, to even accidentally offend someone of higher status. The constant fear of inadvertently breaking a rule, of being wrongly accused, of facing brutal, irrevocable punishment, would be a suffocating presence. Your modern sense of personal freedom, of the right to make choices and recover from mistakes, would be utterly crushed. Even the concept of contract law, which Hammurabi's Code was famous for, would be perilous. If you entered into an agreement, say, to borrow money or rent land, and failed to uphold your end, the penalties could be severe. Debt could lead to enslavement, not just for you, but for your entire family. The financial security net of your modern world, bankruptcy laws, social assistance, simply does not exist. A single misstep in business, a single bad harvest could condemn you and your loved ones to a life of perpetual servitude. The priests also play a role in justice, interpreting omens and curses. If you were believed to have incurred the wrath of the gods or to have used black magic, the legal system would quickly intertwine with religious fervor. The trial by ordeal, such as being thrown into the river, was a common method of determining guilt, with the belief that the gods would intervene for the innocent. Imagine facing that, knowing your life literally hung on whether you could swim against the current or whether a priest declared you unclean. Your modern notions of human rights, of proportionate punishment, of due process, would be utterly meaningless in this world. You would live under a constant, chilling awareness that the axe of justice hangs perpetually over your head, ready to fall for offences that in your world would be considered trivial, or for actions that were purely accidental. The rule of law here is less about protection and more about control, a brutal mechanism for maintaining social order through fear. You wouldn't survive a day, not because of the specific laws, but because the very spirit of justice in Babylon is one that would strip you of dignity, equity, and ultimately life itself. Now, let's talk about the economic reality of ancient Babylon. A system far removed from your cashless transactions, direct deposits, and credit scores. Money as you know it barely exists. Instead, the economy operates on a system of barter, of services, and of precious metals, primarily silver, measured by weight. And within this system, your life, your labor, and your very existence have a strict and often terrifying value. You wake up in Babylon not with a bank account, not with savings, not with a guaranteed income. You wake up with nothing but the labor of your own two hands, and your ability to work is your sole commodity. There's no minimum wage, no social security, no safety net whatsoever. If you can't work, you don't eat. If you get sick or injured, your income immediately ceases and your family suffers. This isn't a hypothetical fear. It's the daily, pressing reality. Most free citizens belong to the mushkenu class, the commoners, the laborers, the farmers. Your wages, if you receive them, would likely be in barley or oil, just enough to sustain you and your family, with very little left over for luxuries or savings. Think about this. You work from sunup to sundown, performing back-breaking labor, and your reward is just enough to survive until the next day's labor. The concept of building wealth, of accumulating capital for a comfortable retirement, is a distant fantasy. Your life is a perpetual cycle of work and sustenance, and then there's debt. In your world, debt might mean a credit card bill or a mortgage. In Babylon, debt is a potential death sentence, or worse, a life sentence of servitude. If you borrowed money, perhaps for seeds after a bad harvest, or to pay for a necessary ritual, or simply to survive a lean season and you couldn't repay it, the consequences were devastating. According to Hammurabi's code, you could be forced to sell your children into servitude, or even sell yourself. Imagine the terror. A single bad crop, a sudden illness, an unexpected fine, and you could find yourself no longer a free person, but an awala, a debt slave. This isn't just about losing your freedom. It's about losing your identity, your legal rights, your future. You would become the property of your creditor, bound to work for them for a specified period, often 3 years, sometimes longer. You would have no say in your work, no claim to your earnings, and your life would be entirely at the mercy of your owner. And if your owner was cruel, there was little recourse. Your existence would be defined by labor and obedience, a living chattel. Even if you avoided debt slavery, the social stratification itself is brutal. At the top are the awilu, free citizens, often landowners, merchants, or officials wielding power and privilege. Below them are the mushkenu, commoners. And at the very bottom are the wardu, slaves, either captured in war, born into slavery, or sold into it due to debt. As a newcomer, you'd be thrown into the mushkenu class at best, and probably quickly relegated to wardu status, given your lack of skills, connections, and understanding of the language and customs. The idea of social mobility is almost non-existent. You are born into your station, and that's where you stay. There's no education system to lift you out of poverty, no entrepreneurial spirit that allows you to start from nothing and build an empire. Your future is largely predetermined by your birth and the circumstances of your family. If your parents were farmers, you would be a farmer. If they were potters, you would be a potter. The modern dream of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is utterly alien in this rigid, ancient world. The economy is also prone to wild fluctuations. Trade routes could be disrupted by war, rivers could flood or run dry, affecting crops. A single unfavorable omen could halt a major construction project. This means your economic security is perpetually precarious. One day you might have just enough barley to feed your family. The next you could be staring at famine. There's no governmental aid, no food banks, no charity in the modern sense. Survival depends on your own resilience, your network of family, and sheer luck. Imagine trying to navigate this system with your modern mindset. You'd be looking for opportunities, for ways to innovate, to save, to invest. But every attempt would be met with the cold, hard reality of a fixed hierarchy and a brutal legal code. Your labor isn't about personal fulfillment. It's about survival. Your earnings aren't about building a better life. They're about avoiding debt, avoiding starvation, avoiding enslavement. The constant anxiety of economic insecurity would be a crushing burden. You'd be acutely aware that every decision, every misstep, could lead to catastrophic consequences for you and your family. Your modern comfort of a stable income, access to credit, and a social safety net would feel like an impossible luxury. In Babylon, your life isn't your own to control in the economic sense. It's a constant struggle against forces far greater than yourself, a daily negotiation with scarcity and the ever-present threat of utter destitution. Your value is measured not by your potential, but by your immediate utility, and that value could be stripped away in an instant, leaving you with literally nothing but the clothes on your back, and perhaps not even those. Let's confront one of the most insidious threats of ancient life: disease. In your modern world, a cough might mean a quick trip to the pharmacy for over-the-counter medicine, or at most, a visit to a doctor for antibiotics. In ancient Babylon, a cough could be the precursor to a lingering fever, a debilitating illness, and ultimately, a painful death. Your modern immune system, unexposed to such a virulent microbial landscape, would be utterly overwhelmed. Think back to the lack of sanitation, the communal latrines, the sewage flowing through open channels or simply being dumped into the streets, the same river water used for drinking, washing, and waste disposal. This creates a perfect breeding ground for bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Dysentery, cholera, typhoid, malaria, smallpox. These weren't distant threats or historical footnotes. They were pervasive, ever-present realities. Every breath, every sip of water, every interaction carries a profound risk. You would feel the constant presence of illness. Someone in your family, your neighbor, your workplace would always be sick. The symptoms would be obvious: feverish bodies, racking coughs, vomiting, debilitating diarrhea, skin lesions, weeping eyes. There's no understanding of germ theory, no concept of sterile environments. People would share cups, share food, touch sick bodies without washing hands, and the diseases would spread like wildfire through the crowded, unsanitized city. Imagine yourself contracting a fever. Your body, accustomed to fighting off mild colds, would be in shock. The fever would rage, your head pounding, your muscles aching, your throat dry and sore. You'd sweat profusely, quickly becoming dehydrated in the relentless heat. There are no pain relievers, no fever reducers. You'd lie on your reed mat, shivering despite the heat, your body racked with tremors, desperately trying to fight off an unseen enemy. Medical knowledge in Babylon was a blend of practical observation, magical thinking, and religious ritual. Doctors, known as asu, physicians, or ashipu, exorcists, priests, would attempt to diagnose and treat ailments. But their methods would shock you. They might examine your liver, a common diagnostic tool, interpret omens, and offer incantations to appease angry gods or drive out demons believed to be causing the illness. Herbal remedies, poultices, and rudimentary surgeries existed. but their effectiveness was limited and the risk of infection from unsterilized tools was immense. A simple cut, a scrape you might get during your back-breaking labor, could quickly become infected. Without antibiotics, that infection would spread rapidly, causing swelling, pus, and intense pain. What might be a minor inconvenience in your world could, in Babylon, lead to gangrene, amputation, if you were lucky enough to have a skilled surgeon, which was rare, or systemic infection and a drawn-out, agonizing death. The constant open wounds from labor, the bites of insects, the unsanitary conditions, each one is a potential gateway for a lethal pathogen. Childbirth was another terrifying ordeal, with extremely high mortality rates for both mother and child. A simple infection during delivery, easily treated today, was often a death sentence. Many women didn't survive their childbearing years, and many children didn't live past infancy. The average life expectancy in Babylon was dramatically lower than yours, hovering around 30-35 years, a stark reflection of the constant battle against disease. Beyond the physical suffering, there's the psychological toll, the constant fear of illness, the sight of your loved ones wasting away, the absolute powerlessness in the face of rampant disease. You would live with the knowledge that at any moment, a seemingly minor ailment could escalate into a terminal condition. Your life would be a fragile thread, easily snapped by an invisible assailant. The grief of losing children, siblings, or parents to diseases that are now easily preventable would be a constant shadow over your life. Your pampered modern immune system, built on vaccines and sterile environments, would be ill-equipped for this challenge. You'd be a prime target for every opportunistic pathogen. The strength and resilience you take for granted would quickly fail you. You'd spend your days feeling vaguely unwell, plagued by minor aches, pains, and digestive issues, until one day a more serious infection would take hold. In Babylon, the whispers of the fever are everywhere, and they are almost always telling you that your time is short. Your reliance on modern medicine and public health would be painfully obvious in this hostile environment, where survival is not a given but a daily, desperate fight against unseen enemies as you step out of your dwelling into the narrow, unpaved streets of Babylon. You are immediately assaulted by a cacophony of sights, sounds, and most dominantly smells. This isn't the orderly, clean, and regulated urban landscape you know. This is a sprawling, organic, intensely visceral city, a testament to raw humanity living in close quarters. The first thing that hits you, even before the visual, is the smell. It's an overpowering, complex stench that would make your stomach churn. Imagine the combined odors of human and animal waste, perpetually damp earth, stale cooking fires, decaying refuse, unwashed bodies, and the pungent aroma of various unidentifiable substances. There are no garbage collection services. Waste is simply dumped into open pits or thrown into the street. The air, heavy with heat and humidity, traps these odors, creating a pervasive, suffocating miasma. Your nose, accustomed to filtered, clean air, would be in a constant state of assault, and the smell would cling to your clothes, your skin, your very soul. You try to breathe shallowly to block it out, but it's everywhere, an inescapable part of the Babylonian experience. Visually, the streets are a chaotic tapestry. The houses, mostly mud brick, are densely packed, often 2 or 3 stories high, with blank walls facing the street for privacy and protection from the sun. There are no wide sidewalks, no neat rows of trees. The ground underfoot is uneven, a mix of packed earth, loose stones, and patches of deep mud from spilled water or recent rain. It's teeming with life, people, donkeys, goats, dogs, all jostling for space. You navigate around carts laden with goods, men carrying heavy burdens, children playing in the dirt, and the ubiquitous presence of stray animals, many of them scrawny and diseased. The sounds are a constant, overwhelming din. The braying of donkeys, the bleating of goats, the barking of dogs, the shouts of merchants hawking their wares in a language you don't understand. You'd hear the rhythmic thud of a distant potter at his wheel, the clanging of a blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of women at the communal well, and the cries of babies. It's a relentless, unfiltered soundtrack of human and animal life, with no quiet corners, no moments of peaceful silence. Your modern ears, accustomed to the controlled ambient noise of your home, would be constantly overwhelmed, leading to a profound sense of sensory overload and exhaustion. Look closely at the ground. There's human excrement, animal droppings, food scraps, broken pottery, discarded reeds, and the general detritus of daily life. Flies buzz in thick clouds over everything, landing on the rubbish, then on your face, then on the food sold by a nearby vendor. Your modern instincts would scream at you to avoid touching anything, to cover your mouth and nose, but you're forced to wade through it, to interact with it, to simply exist within it. The markets, while vibrant, would be another sensory assault. Spices, grains, textiles, pottery, and small animals are all crammed together, creating a dizzying array of sights and smells. But underneath the exotic allure, there's the same underlying filth. Food is openly displayed, often uncovered, attracting swarms of insects. Meat hangs in the open air, slowly spoiling in the heat. Bargaining is aggressive, the language harsh and unfamiliar. You'd feel lost, disoriented, and deeply vulnerable in this bustling, incomprehensible chaos. Even the beautiful architecture, the ziggurats, the Ishtar Gate, would be viewed through a haze of dust and the stench of the streets. While impressive, they are not monuments of cleanliness or order. The sheer scale of human effort and human waste involved in maintaining such a city would be constantly apparent. The lack of personal space is also a shock. You are always surrounded by people in close proximity. There's no expectation of personal bubbles or privacy in the public sphere. People brush past you, jostle you, shout around you. Your modern need for individual space and quiet reflection would be impossible to satisfy. You are always part of the crowd, always observed, always exposed. Living in the symphony of the slums means a constant state of sensory overwhelm, a perpetual assault on your comfort and cleanliness. Your modern senses, refined and protected, would find themselves under siege. The persistent grime, the relentless noise, the pervasive stench, these aren't just minor inconveniences. They are fundamental aspects of daily life that would wear down your spirit, exhaust your body, and make you deeply, profoundly uncomfortable in a way you've never experienced. You would quickly yearn for the quiet, the cleanliness, the order of your own world, realizing that even the most picturesque historical reconstructions often fail to capture the truly brutal, overwhelming reality of ancient urban living. Even if you manage to survive the squalor, the labor, and the diseases within the city walls, an even greater, more existential threat looms: the constant spectre of war and invasion. Babylon, magnificent as it was, existed in a perpetually unstable geopolitical landscape, a tempting prize for ambitious neighbors. For you, a modern individual, this translates into a terrifying vulnerability and the very real possibility of being caught in the brutal maw of ancient conflict. Your modern world, for many, is one of relative peace, protected by international law, professional armies, and diplomatic negotiations. In Babylon, diplomacy often failed, and wars were frequent, brutal, and deeply personal. You wouldn't just read about conflicts on a news feed. You would live with their direct, terrifying consequences. The massive walls of Babylon, while impressive, were not an impenetrable shield. They were a constant reminder of the external dangers that lay beyond. Imagine the sudden, chilling sound of alarm bells ringing through the city, a frantic cacophony that sends everyone into a panic. This isn't a drill. It means invaders are at the gates, or worse, have breached the outer defenses. Your comfortable sense of security would evaporate in an instant. There's no government-issued emergency kit, no evacuation plan for civilians. Your survival depends on immediate flight, or finding a hiding place within the crowded city. As a male, you would likely be conscripted into military service. Forget basic training and advanced weaponry. You'd be handed a bronze spear or a bow, perhaps a leather shield, and marched off to defend the city or fight in a distant campaign. Your lack of combat experience, your soft modern body, and your complete unfamiliarity with ancient warfare would make you little more than cannon fodder. The battlefield of Babylon is not a clean, distant event. It's a chaotic hand-to-hand slaughter. Swords, axes, arrows, these are not movie props. They are instruments of brutal death. You'd witness horrors unimaginable to your modern mind. The gruesome injuries, the screams of the dying, the visceral terror of fighting for your life against an enemy who shows no mercy. Your comrades would fall around you, their blood staining the dusty ground. There's no concept of humanitarian aid, no Geneva Conventions. You fight to kill or you are killed. If you are wounded, your chances of survival are slim to none. Even a minor injury could lead to a fatal infection. If you are captured, you face the prospect of a brutal death, torture, or enslavement. But even if you're not a soldier, you are still profoundly affected. The city itself becomes a target. Sieges are long, brutal affairs designed to starve the population into submission. Food and water become scarce, prices skyrocket, and the ever-present threat of disease intensifies in crowded, unsanitary conditions. You'd live in constant fear of the enemy breaching the walls, unleashing a torrent of rape, pillage, and murder upon the city. Your home could be burned, your family scattered, your life utterly destroyed in a single, terrifying act of conquest. The psychological toll of living under such a constant threat would be immense. You'd learn to be suspicious of strangers, to constantly scan the horizon, to dread every rumor of troop movements. Your sense of security would be shattered, replaced by a pervasive anxiety. There's no illusion of invincibility, no faith in a higher power to protect you from human cruelty. You are always just one battle, one siege, one invasion away from losing everything. Consider the aftermath of a conflict, even if Babylon emerges victorious. The dead must be buried, the wounded tended to or left to die, and the city rebuilt. Resources are drained, families are broken, and the scars of war linger for generations. Your modern sense of collective trauma and recovery would be challenged by the sheer frequency and brutality of these ancient conflicts. The very landscape of Babylon bears witness to this constant struggle. The massive walls, the fortified gates, the military garrisons, they are not just architectural marvels. They are stark reminders that this was a world forged in conflict and perpetually on guard. Your comfortable distance from the realities of war would be obliterated, replaced by a raw, visceral understanding of what it means to live on the brink. You wouldn't survive a day, not just because of the physical dangers of combat, but because the constant, crushing anxiety of living under the shadow of the sword would mentally break you, stripping away your modern sense of safety and leaving you utterly exposed to the brutal caprices of ancient power struggles. Finally, let's talk about the spiritual landscape of ancient Babylon, a world utterly saturated with religious belief, divine will, and the ever-present, sometimes terrifying, influence of the gods. For you, a modern individual accustomed to personal belief, religious freedom, or even secularism, navigating the labyrinthine demands of Babylonian religion would be a bewildering, dangerous, and often financially ruinous ordeal. In Babylon, every aspect of life is intertwined with the divine. The gods aren't abstract concepts. They are living, breathing, capricious forces who actively intervene in human affairs. Every flood, every famine, every illness, every victory or defeat is attributed to the favor or wrath of specific deities. You would live under the constant scrutiny of a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with their own domain, their own temples, and their own demands. Your day would begin and end with rituals, prayers, and offerings. Failure to properly honor the gods could bring disaster upon your family or the entire city. Imagine the fear of offending Ishtar, goddess of love and war, or Marduk, the supreme deity of Babylon. Your personal choices are not your own. They are weighed against divine will. If you were to openly question the power of the gods or neglect your religious duties, you would be seen not just as an atheist, but as a dangerous blasphemer, inviting divine punishment upon everyone. The penalties for sacrilege could be severe, even death. The priests, the Baru diviners, and Ashipu exorcists wield immense power. They are the interpreters of omens, the mediators between humans and gods. Every unusual event, a bird flying in a certain direction, an unexpected birth, a strange dream, could be an omen requiring their interpretation. You would live in a constant state of superstitious dread, always looking for signs, always fearing the displeasure of the heavens. Your modern, rational mind, seeking logical explanations for events, would find itself battling against a deeply ingrained worldview where magic and divine intervention are the ultimate reality. If you or a loved one fell ill, it wasn't just a physical ailment. It was often seen as the result of a sin, a curse, or a demon. You wouldn't just seek a physician, you'd seek an exorcist. These priests would perform elaborate rituals, incantations, and offerings to drive out the evil spirits or appease the angry god. These rituals are not free. They demand sacrifices, offerings of food, precious oils, or even silver, placing an additional financial burden on your already meager resources. Imagine sacrificing a significant portion of your income, or your only goat, to a priest for a ritual that provides no tangible medical benefit, but is believed to be your only hope. Dreams are not just subconscious ramblings, they are messages from the gods. If you had a particularly vivid or disturbing dream, you would consult a dream interpreter. Their pronouncements could dictate your actions for days, weeks, or even months, affecting your work, your relationships, and your entire life trajectory. Your personal autonomy, your right to make your own decisions, would be constantly usurped by the interpretations of divine will. The ziggurats, those massive step temples, are not just architectural wonders. They are literally the stairways to heaven, where priests would ascend to communicate with the gods, attending temple rituals, participating in festivals, making offerings. These are not optional activities. They are civic duties expected of every citizen. Failure to participate could lead to social ostracism, suspicion, and even official punishment. Your Sundays are not your own. They are for the gods. The weight of this constant spiritual burden would be suffocating. The fear of divine wrath, the need for endless propitiation, the financial drain of rituals, the constant uncertainty of omens, it would permeate every moment of your waking life. Your modern skepticism, your critical thinking, your embrace of scientific reasoning would be utterly useless and dangerous in this environment. You'd be forced to adopt a worldview that contradicts everything you know, to engage in practices you find irrational, and to live in a state of perpetual spiritual anxiety. You wouldn't survive a day, not because a god would strike you down, though the Babylonians might believe that, but because the overwhelming, all-encompassing nature of their religious belief system would demand a complete surrender of your modern mind, your personal freedom, and your financial resources. It would be a psychological and spiritual assault unlike anything you've ever experienced, rendering your modern consciousness utterly incompatible with the divine demands of ancient Babylon. So, you've spent a day in ancient Babylon, or at least a stark, visceral glimpse into what it might feel like. The sun has set, painting the western sky in hues of orange and purple, casting long, dramatic shadows over the mud-brick homes and the towering ziggurats. You're back on your reed mat, your body aching, your senses reeling, your mind exhausted by the sheer brutality of it all. The persistent stench of the city still clings to you, the taste of gruel and dust still lingers on your tongue, and the phantom pains of imagined labor still throb in your muscles. You're no longer thinking of Babylon as a romanticized relic of the past, a grand backdrop for historical epics. Instead, it's a terrifyingly real place, a crucible of human endurance where survival was a daily, desperate battle against disease, hunger, cruelty, and the overwhelming demands of an unforgiving world. Now, as you lie here, safe and sound in your own bed, feel the softness of your sheets, the evenness of your mattress. Listen to the quiet hum of your modern home, a stark contrast to the cacophony of ancient streets. Breathe in the clean, filtered air, free of the pervasive stench of waste and wood smoke. Think about the simple luxury of a hot shower, clean water, and food from a sterile supermarket. Remember the freedom to choose your own path, to seek justice, to openly question, to live without the constant fear of disease or the ever-present threat of war. Ancient Babylon, in all its glory and innovation, casts a long shadow, reminding us just how far humanity has come. It was a place of immense power and profound human suffering, a world where the very act of living was an arduous, dangerous endeavor. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep, let the whispers of Babylon fade. Be grateful for the comforts, the freedoms, and the peace of your own time. And know that you, with your modern sensibilities and your soft, uncalloused hands, would not have survived a single day. Sleep well,